am here today with this. This is the 2024 Hyundai Tucson plug-in hybrid. Let's get into it.
So when I was setting up to shoot this car, this woman was coming out of a hiking trail and stopped me and said, "I have that exact same car and I love it." So I was talking to her a little bit about why she loves this car, and she was saying she loves the mileage, she's had no issues with it, it's comfortable. So if any of you own this Hyundai, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know if you love yours also. Let's get into our review. I don't know if you remember the first generation of this car, but it was kind of a dog. I mean, sure, it was reliable and it was a good car, but it was pretty ugly and small and, just didn't have anything close to the sophistication of this vehicle. It's sort of like the RAV4 and the Prius, these cars that have just come such a long way in a short period of time. You'll notice on the exterior, we've got a lot of new design cues for the Hyundai Tucson. So you'll notice a lot of these really sharp angles, and it's borrowing those from the Ioniq 5, right? The Hyundai's EV that has that crazy sort of back to the future look that a lot of us really like. I love it. I don't know about you. Let me know in the comments what you think of the Ioniq 5 and the way this looks. But also, because this is a Tucson and it's an SUV, it has a bit, some rugged design qualities as well, like, these sort of plastic wheel well covers. You've got, wheels that are specific to this vehicle. I've got runners up here, and plus a few chrome details that really make this car stand out. What do you think? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Let me know in the comments. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how this thing drives. There are a lot of things I like about this car, and one of them, honestly, is the way that it drives. In general, I like a plug-in hybrid because I do like the instant torque of those electric motors added to the convenience of gas. So, full disclosure, I am a little partial to a little torque. But this is a really, really comfortable drive. The shifting was seamless. The brakes are fantastic. I loved the safety features. I'll get to those in a minute. But I found this vehicle really comfortable to drive. My passengers were comfortable in the drive. It had very little body roll. I live in a very windy canyon, and the body roll didn't bother me at all. Steering was great. It was easy to park. There's a lot to love about the way this car drives, not to mention this sweet fuel economy. Let me tell you a little bit about what it's like behind the wheel of this vehicle. So, first of all, steering wheel's great. We've got lots of controls here. They're pretty intuitive. I'm a fan. We've got a digital dash, which tells us everything we need to know between the amount of battery we have left over here, the amount of fuel we have left over here, kind of what we're averaging in terms of MPG, which right now I'm getting 30 miles to the gallon. This meter is obviously telling us how if the battery's charging, et cetera, et cetera. Great. Here we've got this big touch screen with, flush buttons. In my opinion, these aren't ideal. I find them a little difficult to use, and I find that this media display is, average at best. For example, when you go to the home screen like this, all these, it's really hard to see at a glance, when you take your eyes off the road, to see which button you should push, right? Because they all look the same, right? They're the same color, etc. Like, this could have been done better. The good news is this does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integration, but it is wired. So you need to plug it in here and then plug in your phone, which is fine. There is a charging pad right here. You can't see it, but it is here, and thus it gives you 2 places to put a phone. So last night when I was driving with my husband, I had his phone charging here while my phone was laying here, and that was actually really fantastic. In terms of conveniences, I've got an 8-way driver's adjustable seat, which is great. You know, you've got everything like lumbar and the headrest, all these wonderful things. Then I've got this is the higher trim, right? So I've got heated and cooled, ventilated and heated seats. I've got a steering wheel warmer and obviously the usual things. There are 2 things I want to talk about in terms of the drive with this vehicle from a driver standpoint. So for shifting, it's got these buttons here. This is something car companies are doing now, which instead of, you know, having a shifter, you press a button. I'm not a huge fan of this. I find it totally counterintuitive and really, really awkward. And when you've got to like rush and reverse out of somebody's way, as I had to do yesterday, I was like, oh, Jesus, which button is it? I'm sure over time you get used to that and your reflexes would just pop in and that would be fine. One thing I do love here are the drive modes. I know I'm a broken record. I always talk to you guys about drive modes, but I'm just gonna say it. Like this vehicle, because it's plug-in hybrid, is gonna default to the eco mode, which is fine, right? You'll see that right here. And then you've got this little shifter here. If you're test driving this car, do not miss this, please, please, I beg of you. Then when you shift it, hey, see, shift down once, you go straight to sport mode, which I love. Everything stiffens up, it shifts at higher RPMs, it just gets a little spunkier. That's fantastic. But if you live in a cold climate, you shift down once from eco and you go straight to snow, which is really nice that that's just with a push of a button. It's got smart mode as well. And as I said, eco mode is what it's going to default to. Those drives modes are critical for you to enjoy this car.
All right, guys, another great example of why the Hyundai Tucson is great is today, because I'm moving my kid out of her college dorm. Yup. Back home for the summer, and that means this car is chock full of stuff. So, but what's great is I get increased visibility with this car's feature. Let me show you what's up. So when I turn on my turn indicator right here on the dash, I get this groovy little screen that shows me if it's safe to pull out into traffic, because I sure as heck can't see through the back of this car. Fantastic. And yes, my Tesla Model Y has that feature as well, but because it only has one screen and it doesn't have a dash, I have to look to my right if I'm turning left, which is totally counterintuitive, and it doesn't enable me to look through my side mirror at the same time. So I find that this is much more intuitive, much easier, and makes it a lot safer for me to drive in these conditions. Way to go.
I gotta show you guys, right? My Stanley Cup fitting in the cup holders. Love it. I know it's taken up a lot of real estate in this shot, but I think it's great. These are traditional cup holders, so if you've got a square water bottle, it's not going to fit in there. Your Fiji water, that's not going to fly. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. There also are not bottle holders in these door slots, so think about that. Also on the interior, we've got a few fun places to put things. I showed you before the charging pads. We've got this whole area right here. We've got a little slot here on the side. On both sides of this center console, we've got a slot. I've got a big storage container here, which you could probably fit a purse in there. And then in back, you've only just got places for the doors. So, you know, there are a few places to put stuff. All right, guys, here we are in the back seat of the Tucson plug-in hybrid. Listen, this is a nice back seat. I've got a headrest here, which is always good. The back seats are adjustable, so we can go back a little bit, which I think is pretty great if I was hanging out back here. There are regular cup holders here in the door. They're not very big, but I think they've sacrificed that for this sweet sound system. So I don't know, if I were to take if I had my choice, I would definitely take music over my kids storing their goldfish. Who cares? And then we've got an armrest here that does have 2 traditional cup holders as well. There are USBs, 2 of them. as well as vents, which are really important. There aren't vents up high. Would it get stuffy back here? Not in my opinion, to be honest. I mean, I've got this huge panoramic sunroof. I've also got this little window here, which is giving me a little bit of air. In general, this is a really nice back seat, and frankly, this is more headroom than I expected, and the legroom is pretty phenomenal. The back end of this vehicle is huge, especially for a car that doesn't feel very big. The back end is enormous. I put this seat back, so I'm not getting as much here. So this is big, and these rear seats fold flat. So as you can see here, I moved my daughter out of college this past weekend. We got everything into this vehicle. It was incredible the amount of cargo I was able to get in here. It was quite impressive, so way to go. In terms, there is not a spare in here, so keep that in mind, because there's a lot happening in a plug-in hybrid, right? They've got to make room for the battery as well as all the regular engine and all that kind of stuff. So we've got charging equipment back here and a few slots to put places, but you know, in terms of compartment and storage in this back end, sure, it's nice and flat, but you're not going to have a lot of stuff hidden, which, you know, take it or leave it. Let's talk a little bit about a plug-in hybrid. So right now, a lot of us are experimenting with electrification, right? I have an electric car. It has its pros and its cons. That's a whole different video, which you could see here. But right now, plug-in hybrids are kind of interesting because unlike regular hybrid engines, sometimes you can get tax incentives for a plug-in hybrid because it's officially an electric car, but then you're not totally dependent on the grid, right? So if your battery isn't charged, you can still get places, which is great. And plus, this vehicle in particular, and a lot of the other Hyundai electric vehicles, are assembled in Alabama. So that does mean that you can qualify for the federal incentives, but just to be sure, check your local guides because that stuff changes all the time. Okay guys, something we have to talk about here is this little symbol here on the next to the fuel tank. So it's got this crazy symbol. When I opened to put some gas in this yesterday, I was like, what the hell is it telling me? Is it telling me I have to wait 20 minutes? Or is it gonna take 20 minutes to fill this up? So I started Googling it there at the gas station. Well, that was mistake number one because the internet is ablaze with bad information. So I'm gonna show you on screen here what the owner's manual says about this. Essentially what it is after you fill it up, you have to wait 20 minutes to fill it up again. It's something about depressurizing the fuel tank. I don't know why. I'm not a mechanical engineer. My husband is. I asked him, you know what he said? He was like, I don't know. So that was great. But the point is, it's basically saying once you fill this up, you can't fill it up again for another 20 minutes. Big deal. I'm sure most of us can live with that. Okay, so where does that leave us with the 2024 Hyundai plug-in hybrid Tucson? Listen, in terms of pros, I would absolutely put bang for the buck because when you're driving this vehicle, never once did I feel, geez, I wish this was, I mean, of course, I always want a performance car. I always wish I was driving a Porsche or Ferrari, like a motorhead mama, like duh. But, you know, never once was like, oh, I wish this had more power. I wish this transmission was better. This vehicle always performs. So bang for the buck in the drive, absolutely. I thought the conveniences were fantastic. The cargo room was great. In terms of comfort, this thing is wonderful. Like, it's really difficult to say this isn't a good value for the money. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Then if I were to talk about the cons of this vehicle, a few things. One, I don't like Hyundai's infotainment system, just not a fan, but because of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, you can get around that. Two, I'm not a big fan of the buttons for shifting, just whatever. The styling is questionable, not everyone's going to be into that. And plus, not everybody is going to be willing to pay for a plug-in hybrid. So what's the verdict? I don't know. Listen, if you're looking for a plug-in hybrid SUV, I think it's really hard to find a flaw that makes it not worth buying this car? I don't know. Let's take a minute. Anybody got anything? Put in the comments. Let me know. I'd be interested. But seriously, it drives great. It's comfortable. Great bang for the buck. The technology is phenomenal. Tell me something bad about this car. Go ahead. I dare you. So there you have it, 2024 Hyundai Tucson plug-in hybrid. I'm Motorhead Mama. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.